I'm telling everybody. I'm telling everybody. I'm telling everybody about the one I love. Yeah, well, the things of this old earth are not okay.
Hey guys, welcome back to Resistance Chicks. We're your hosts, Leah and Michelle. Today is the 18th of October, 2019. Leah's ready and eager to get to the news. We have a great show to bring you today. Hey guys, stay with us. Bailey is here with us. There's a little wires here. That's nice. That's a good looking for you. You're just going to take a screenshot. Okay. You know how hard I want to set this camera up? Jesus set me free. By grace through faith in Christ alone, He set me free. Now death is dead to me. All right. So anyway, Jesus set me free. I didn't know how to. I am one of those people, I want it, and then it's not going to be. Y'all can see the blue line. It's going to drive me crazy. But anyway, we got a great show to bring you. We've got Project Veritas.
We've talked a lot about China this week, and I'm happy about it because we keep talking about, we want to talk about China.
Yeah.
I want the people in China to be free. Pence is actually going to do a Chinese speech, and it's got some, the market spooked, I guess. I don't know. I'm going to delve into this article. Bad cop, Pence, Chinese speech. Trump is the good cop.
Okay.
Pence is the bad cop, and you've seen that.
Yeah.
And we wonder, why does Trump say these things? Because they play.
But it cracks me up because when I see Mike Pence, just like my thing goes to like soft teddy bear. Yeah. But whenever he's anywhere, this is Mike Pence.
I know he's the presidential.
I mean, there's Mike Pence. He's supposed to be this like tough guy, watchdog. But I'm just like, okay.
But he is a China hawk. Like he knows what's going down in China, and I appreciate that. At roughly the same time that today's Boeing news hit, revealing that instant messages by Boeing employees in 2016 indicated employees misled the FAA about a key safety system in the 737 MAX, sending both BA stock and the broader market sharply lower as the biggest Dow component tumbled. A second report also hit, which added to the risk-off sentiment. Okay. At 12:20, Reuters reported that Vice President Mike Pence planned to deliver his second major policy speech on China next Thursday. However, with the market focused on the fallout from the Boeing news, this report was mostly lost in the noise. As Reuters reported, Pence would deliver the remarks for the Wilson Center at the Conrad Hotel in Washington. And if you didn't know this, Zero Hedge, I love going to Zero Hedge. It takes the financial market angle on most things. So that's why it's talking about the market in relation to Pence's speech. About a year after he harshly criticized, I loved that speech a year ago. He was in, I guess, at a hotel, and he just
it was really great.
China.
Was it a whole year ago?
I guess so. And criticized Beijing in an address at the Hudson Institute think tank, a speech that was widely viewed as the most critical remarks by such a high-ranking U.S. official in recent memory. The address will reflect on the U.S.-China relationship over the past year and look at the future of our relationships, Reuters noted. And while the tone and sentiment of Pence's speech are unknown, what is well known is that the vice president has traditionally been an outspoken hawk when it comes to China. As such, as Vital Knowledge pointed out, if Pence's speech this Thursday about China is anything like his one from October 2018, the markets will not be happy. As further reminder, the vice president has scheduled to deliver a human rights speech on the anniversary of Tiananmen Square massacre in June.
Oh, wow.
Only to have it canceled by Trump himself so he could secure a meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping in Osaka. So he was supposed to do that, but he didn't get it through. As Reuters further notes, Pence's speech will be delivered just weeks after President Donald Trump gave a vague outline of the very first phase of a deal with Beijing and suspended a threatened tariff hike, signaling a thaw in the trade relations between the two countries. But at that same week, Washington put Chinese video surveillance firm Hikvision and dozens of other Chinese entities on a blacklist. I don't know if you guys knew this, but they did. It was kind of silent, and I wish the media would cover it. CNN should cover it. CNN should cover human rights abuses, but they don't.
Right.
So
all they can cover is Trump
dozens
impeachment.
of Chinese business entities on a blacklist to punish them for their treatment of the Muslim Uyghurs, the minorities.
Huh.
And they ratcheted up pressure on Beijing over human rights issues.
Good deal.
The risk is that despite the missed signals, many China watchers see Pence's role as playing bad cop on China so that Trump can shift his tone when he sees fit to strike a deal with President Xi. So, would Pence double down on his recent hawkish sentiment, or would the Veep turn a page after the latest trade war? I think that Pence is more a little bit like the rest of us. He has these principles and they're deep inside it. He doesn't have the business person to go back and forth. Like, I couldn't stomach it. I can't stomach good cop, bad cop. And I wanted to, with that in mind, a Uyghur American to Congress is testifying against China and may cost the lives of this person's parents. Uyghur Americans face regular threats from the Chinese Communist Party on U.S. soil and fear of having their families imprisoned in a concentration camp, says Nuri Turkle, a Uyghur American, told Congress on Thursday. He also noted that all Americans, thanks to China's pervasive presence in the American manufacturing supply chain, are at risk of buying products made by Chinese slaves and unknowingly enriching the repressors who oppose them. Turkle is the co-founder of the Uyghur Human Rights Project, which I think is incredibly interesting and I didn't even know existed. So you have this Uyghur Human Rights Project. It was founded by the Uyghur American Association in 2004 with a supporting grant from the National Endowment of Democracy. Its mission is to promote human rights and democracy for the Uyghur people and to raise awareness of what we talk about this. You have these ethnically and culturally a Turkic people living in the areas of Central Asia, commonly known as East Turkestan. The area is vast, constituting 1/6 of the total land area under the control of the People's Republic of China. The Uyghurs have a rich cultural history. While I'm reading this, you could probably bring up a picture of the Uyghurs. Going back 4,000 years before embracing Islam in the 10th century, Uyghurs believed in Buddhism, certain types of Christianity. Today, the Uyghurs practice a moderate form of Sufi Islam that lead predominantly secular lives. I'm trying to spell Uyghur.
Yeah, I got it.
But, forced labor, mass internment, and social control in Xinjiang. The Communist Party is believed to be imprisoning as many as 3 million Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities, such as the Kazakhs and the Kyrgyz people, in concentration camps in Xinjiang, where they are regularly subject to murder, rape, indoctrination, live organ harvesting, slavery, forced sterilization, and other human rights atrocities. Turkle, a U.S. citizen of Uyghur descent, told the Congressional Executive Commission on China during a hearing yesterday, that China's flagrant human rights abuses have pervasive consequences in America for all Americans. Uyghur Americans, however, must weigh their desire to speak freely with the potential of torture and murder of their loved ones. He says Uyghurs outside of China are subject to extraterritorial surveillance and coercion, even here in America. Our latest report on this issue documents these ongoing and flagrant violations of federal law on U.S. soil. They are telling us, we are watching you. Wherever you go, you are still Chinese. Even though you're outside of China, that doesn't mean that they can't do something to you, because they have your friends, your children, your parents, your relatives. Agents of a foreign power are surveilling and terrorizing our own fellow American citizens with threats to send their remaining family members to the camps if they speak out about what is happening in their homeland. And then asked by commission member Senator Mark Rubio to describe his personal experience, Turkle said that he does not expect to ever see his parents again, and that China may kill them or punish him for appearing before Congress. Let's see if I can
play that one first.
It's a small clip here.
Mom is 68. I don't think that I will ever see them again unless the Chinese government allows them to spend the rest of their lives here with their 3 American grandchildren.
I know it's really
difficult.
soft.
I would be disingenuous for me to say that I have a normal life. I don't. Even testifying at this hearing may cost the lives of my parents. But, it's the right thing to do. I have to speak out. This helps me to overcome the sense of anxiety, sense of guilt, sense of desperation, despair, because speaking for the voice of people is very empowering.
2 things that I thought that I was over with when I arrived in the United States and became a U.S. citizen. One, that I would never talk about my past history of being born in a re-education camp some 40-odd years later. we're just now coming to our attention.
Yeah.
But he was born in a re-education camp. They've been doing this for over 40
Longer
years.
than 40 years.
We are talking about similar circumstances, too, that I should be able to speak my mind. That is not happening to its full extent. Rubio responded by noting that every American company doing business with China is complicit in their harassment of U.S. citizens like Turkle and the widespread human rights abuses in China because our partner in business is the Communist Chinese partner. And go ahead and play some of this testimony.
Salam, and thank you for having me today. In 2017, China's Xinjiang region embarked on the probably largest incarceration of an ethno-religious minority since the Holocaust. Despite international criticism, Beijing has persisted in this campaign. The reason for this is now clear. All along, there was a long-term strategy behind it. What I'm presenting today is in a number of ways more shocking than the re-education campaign itself.
You can turn on the subtitles.
It is more long-term, more all-encompassing, more intrusive, and more devious. Within this grand scheme, the camps only represent one piece of an entire puzzle. Beijing's long-term strategy in Xinjiang is predicated upon a perverse combination of coercive training and labor, intergenerational separation, and complete control over family units. Much of this is being implemented under the heading and guise of poverty alleviation. In my research, I've identified 3 schemes by which the state seeks to place the vast majority of minority adults into different forms of coercive or at least involuntary labor. Flow 1 pertains to persons in vocational training internment camps. Camp detainees can end up in factories, on internment camp compounds, in industrial parks, which can be located near camps or the camps in them, or village satellite factories. The employing companies receive a 1,800 Chinese yuan state subsidy for each internment camp laborer they train, 5,000 yuan for each they employ, and a shipping cost subsidy of 4% of their sales volume. In 2018, Huafu Corporation, which operates the world's largest dyed yarn production in Xinjiang, received $500 million Chinese yuan, or 71 million US dollars, in subsidies from the Xinjiang government. This means that Beijing is now turning its internment campaign into a business of oppression, where participating companies benefit not only from huge government subsidies, but also from cheap minority labor. As a result, they will be able to undercut global prices and turn made in Xinjiang into a multi-billion-dollar business model. In one document, a company was promised the free use of factories. The government paid for 2/3 of the upfront investment cost and provided 500 internment camp laborers with accompanying police guards. The factories came with security equipment pre-installed and are being run in a semi-military style management fashion. In 2018, several Uyghur counties established large factory compounds explicitly designed to employ internment camp labor. One county alone commissioned a factory park with 335,000 square foot of floor space to be constructed directly on an internment camp compound, providing forced labor for 1,560 camp detainees.
Wow.
Flow 2 in this scheme pertains to a vast government scheme that puts hundreds of thousands of so-called rural surplus laborers into centralized training lasting between 1 and 3 months, involving 1 month of military drill in order to produce standardized behavior, 1 month of political thought indoctrination, and 1 month of vocational skills training. Workers are then sent off to their new work destination in large groups and live in factory dormitories, often far from home. This process might not be as coercive as internment camp labor, but it shares many similar features, indicating a high degree of coercion. Flow 3 places rural Uyghur women into village factories equipped with nurseries for infants as young as a few months old. Uyghur women are traditionally resistant to full-time work because they care for the elderly and children. Government village work teams have been working overtime to quote-unquote convince these women and their parents of the benefits of full-time factory labor. Government documents note that factory work transforms women away from traditional customs and backward thinking and propels them into modernity. One propaganda text on Uyghur women in a textile factory states that the process of de-extremification causes minority workers to become quote-unquote born again. The Chinese term here used for born again is the same as in the Chinese Bible, where Jesus says you must be born again. Forced labor is equated with salvation. A particular concern is that all of these labor flows are mixing beyond recognition. Graduates from internment camps now work alongside workers from flows 2 and 3. Products made by any combination of these workers are then either directly exported or shipped to Eastern China, where they may form components of products or be repackaged, relabeled, and then exported. As a result, many or most products made in China that rely at least in part on low-skilled, labor-intensive manufacturing can contain elements of involuntary ethnic minority labor from Xinjiang. My findings call for a global investigation of supply chains involving any Chinese products or product components. The burden of proof should be shifted onto the Chinese companies. By declaring any low-skilled, labor-intensive item manufactured in Xinjiang as potentially tainted with some form of coercive minority labor, Chinese companies that seek to export such products to the United States should conclusively prove that these products have no connection to Xinjiang. If they do, then relevant research teams must be permitted to conduct full and randomized authentic due diligence audits in Xinjiang's factories, villages, and internment camps. Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Churchill.
is that it?
No, keep going.
Keep going.
Wanted to hear it.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman McGovern. Thank you, Co-Chair Rubio, and thanks to the other members of the Commission for directing the attention of Congress to the abominable crimes committed against Uyghur people in East Turkestan that China calls Xinjiang. Even as we speak, these crimes are tainting American consumer products. I'm here to urge Congress to strong action to end the unwittingly complicity of the American public to create a legislative mandate for much stronger U.S. government response to the ongoing Uyghur crisis by passing the Uyghur Human Rights Policy Act without further delay. Forced labor is a deeply embedded tool of repression, punishment, and control in China. Over a decade ago, in 2008, the Uyghur Human Rights Project reported on the systematic program of coercive labor transfer that targeted young Uyghur women to be sent to factories in coastal Chinese provinces. The authorities used a combination of deception, pressure, and threats to round up thousands of young Uyghurs against their will. These programs had dual effect of separating families and placing Uyghurs in involuntary factory settings far from home. Today we're seeing a convergence of the Strike Hard campaign of mass internment with a pre-existing state plan to relocate the textile industry to the Uyghur region. As documented in the recently published report by Citizen Power for China, new subsidies encourage companies to shift factories to the region. Government documents outline a plan to have at least 1 million textile industry jobs in the region by 2023. The manager of a factory known to use detained labor camps stated in a TV interview, quote, "With the support of the government, we have already recruited more than 600 people. We plan to reach 1,000 workers by the end of this year. We plan to provide jobs to 1,500 people by the end of 2019, end unquote. One of those workers reported that she got paid less than half of the minimum wage. She was also not allowed to leave and continued to endure forced indoctrination and was threatened with being sent back to the camp if she refused to sign a contract. We want to thank CBP for its October 7 withhold release order on goods produced by Hetian Teida in a factory in the Hotan Vocational Education Training Center. But it's extremely disturbing that US companies were still sourcing from the company until then. 2 weeks ago, baby clothes produced by Hetian Teida were in the shelves at Costco. The company has now pulled these products, but it's hard to understand how the goods got to the store shelves in the first place, given how long this information has been public.
Wow.
But it is not just Hetian Teida. US enforcement must step up the pressure that all goods sourced from the companies in the Uyghur region receive scrutiny commensurate with the extremely high risk of forced labor in the supply chain. Asphyxiating social control facilitates forced and involuntary labor. The techno-totalitarian system of surveillance, intimidation put in place by Xinjiang authorities means that any attempt to resist orders puts one's family at great risk. As in the case of 2008 labor transfer program to eastern factories, many Uyghurs are currently being forced to work in factories under the so-called poverty alleviation program. Uyghurs don't have a choice. Refusing to participate in these programs could result in being sent to the camps.
Wow.
This is the same dynamic as in the state program encouraging marriage between ethnic Han Chinese men and Uyghur women, which has promoted and celebrated in state media outlets.
It's like ethnic
Uyghur
cleansing.
women's consent to these marriages must be assumed in the vast majority of cases given under extreme duress. If a young Uyghur woman to decline a marriage proposal from a Han Chinese man, she and her family could be labeled as extremists and sent to the camps. Uyghurs cannot say no. As a Uyghur individual living overseas recently described to the BBC that there's an atmosphere of horror. Quote, everyone feels like they've been watched all the time. There's a huge sense of fear. People tell me they sleep in their clothes because no one knows whether at night they might be taken away, unquote.
Wow.
Uyghurs outside of China are also subject to extraterritorial surveillance and coercion. Our latest report on this issue documents these ongoing and flagrant violation of federal law on U.S. soil. As one Uyghur American said about being contacted by Chinese state security agents, they're telling us, quote, we're watching you. Wherever you go, still you are Chinese, unquote. Even though you're outside of China, it does not mean that they can't do something to you because they have your friends, children, parents, and relatives. Agents of foreign power are surveilling and terrorizing our own fellow American citizens with threats to send their remaining family members to the camps if they speak out about what is happening in their homeland. Given this system of intimidation and terror, both inside and outside of China, corporate supply chain due diligence is impossible. The complete secrecy surrounding the camps and horrific means of total control that is hanging over those who are not in the camps means that the free flow of information has been cut off to an extent rarely seen in modern times. No independent auditor or supply chain certification process can collect reliable information from workers, factory management, and local government. No interviews can be treated as uncoerced. Because due diligence is impossible, no company can provide assurance that products sourced in the Uyghur region qualify for legal import into the United States or any country that bans the import of forced labor products. If existing legal authorities are insufficient for Customs and Border Protection Agency to issue withhold release orders, commensurate with the risk of allowing illegal goods into the United States, Congress must act to shift the burden of proof to the companies
Okay, you can pause it
that
there.
wish to import
Ray,
products
this is
sourced
stop it first.
Xinjiang
So they're not
or
gonna hear
produced
you.
with the Xinjiang source cut.
Okay.
Okay, this is a small part of the craziness that's happening in China. And what's so insane about it is that you have a Hillary Clinton and you have these deep states and they say Russia, Russia, Russia. And almost to the point where if you say, if there is a country who does pose an existential threat,
Right.
it's treated as the boy who cried wolf. China I mean, I remember watching a movie when we were a kid. It was called China Cried, and it was about a
really intense
woman who would not give up her Christian faith, and she was finally able to leave with her child.
Right.
And I was always touched by that, and I always knew that China was, a communist country, and they persecuted Christians and things like that. But we have this real disconnect because China has opened up their doors to manufacturing and American companies that you have to wonder, why is this still going on in 2019? And it's because the companies don't care. Big corporations don't care. They didn't go over there to help be some sort of bastion of freedom. They went over there for money. And when your bottom line and your dollar is the same in line with the Chinese company, just like who was it, Nike said, hey, China's China, we're going to be Chinese company in China. but over here, they're going to be the whole, human rights, social justice warrior.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of Muslim countries where women are treated as second-class citizens, and people are okay with that because they're like, well, that's just their culture.
Right.
No, a human rights violation is a human rights violation, regardless of how you dice it or what the culture is.
Right, how you slice it or dice it. Exactly. So we're going to continue to bring China being exposed. And I'm just excited about this man coming forward and talking about the Uyghurs, however you want to pronounce it. He said Uyghurs, so we're going to try to pronounce that right. But it is, I think that the way he said that the baby clothes were produced and they put on the shelves in Costco from these, I guess it was... 1.2 million items of baby pajamas and sleeper blankets with the destination of Costco. And it was China produces a fourth of the world's cotton, and Xinjiang produces 84% of that. It was extremely disturbing that Costco had these articles of clothing produced by, most likely, the
slave labor.
You can call them concentration camps. It's hard to get information out. Because they are stuck in these slavery concentration camps. It says that reports of the reality of Xinjiang concentration camps are few and far between, and mostly come from the Kazakhs or the Kyrgyz people whose relatives managed to levy their ethnic identity to get nations like Kazakhstan to get them out. Seyrugal Setbay, a Kazakh woman who escaped slavery in Xinjiang concentration camp, told the Harats in a story published on Thursday. Is she actually eating it? No, okay, she's okay. In a story published Thursday that she was forced to teach Mandarin, which is the only language Beijing recognized as authentic Chinese, that regularly saw inmates beaten, tortured, bloodied, and used for medical experiments and raped.
Wow.
On one occasion, she told the newspaper that she and about 200 others were forced to witness a gang rape by police, and those who winced or seemed uncomfortable were punished with torture. One day, the police, I'm not going to even read it out loud, other women who have escaped have been subject to forced sterilization, forced abortions after multiple rapes, and had their organs screened for viability as an unwilling donor. Survivors say that young men were also raped and sterilized. China claims the camps are vocational training centers for people vulnerable to becoming jihadists.
So, here's the good news, Jim Jordan. And that is the fact that this is being mainstream exposed now.
Yes.
Trump talks about it. Tucker has talked about it. Everybody is exposing this in China. And so you just asked the question, how can this be happening in 2019?
Right.
Well, I think we are about to see it come to a halt because we've got Mike Pence literally pressuring the Chinese. We've got Trump saying, listen, we're not going to be doing dealings with you guys if you continue to have these human rights violations.
Right.
This is really amazing. And so for people that were kind of middle of the road on Trump voting, or even people that were kind of against him, but not like, the crazed against him, just like people like, I don't really like him, I don't want to vote for him, I disagree. He is actually getting things done that are bipartisan around the world. Like everybody should be excited about this. You can't just not be excited about it because you dislike the man. You can support this, and I was just kind of like,
wonder what your sister says.
All right, you guys, we love you. God loves you. God bless. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory if it's actually the truth. All right. God bless, guys.
I was cold.